It is a quotation from Aeternus. It says, "Time is a child that plays like a child, a game on a board, the kingdom of the child."
But even those people wouldn't be capable of knowing what is going on in their own cultures. For instance, they are not conscious of the fact that while they live a conscious life, all the time a myth is played in the unconscious. A myth that extends over centuries. Namely, archetypal ideas, a stream of archetypal ideas that goes on through one individual, through the centuries.
In the ancient lines of Ovid's poem Metamorphoses, we encounter the term Puer Aeternus, Latin for eternal boy, a concept that has echoed through the corridors of time, from mythological tales to modern psychology. Among these ancient stories, the child god Iacchus stands as a symbol of divine youth, revered in the sacred Eleusinian mysteries, the most hallowed rites of ancient Greece. These mysteries, deeply connected to the celebrated Iacchus, who later became synonymous with Bacchus, Dionysus, the god of wine, fertility and ritual madness, also embodies the cyclical nature of life, death and resurrection. Moving from the rituals of ancient Greece to the insights of modern psychology, we find that the Puer Aeternus is more than just a relic of the past. It is a living, breathing force that continues to shape our lives. In the 20th century, Swiss psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung resurrected this ancient term, integrating it into the fabric of modern psychology to describe the Puer Aeternus, the eternal child within us all, the part of our psyche that clings to the creativity, freedom, and innocence of youth. So, what does the Puer Aeternus look like in our contemporary world? It manifests in those who struggle with the demands of adulthood, who resist growing up, preferring the fleeting joys of youth over the responsibilities that come with maturity. This archetype transcends gender, appearing as the Puella Eterna, the eternal girl, in women. These individuals are often dreamers, brimming with creativity and imagination, yet they are also prone to avoiding the harsh realities of life, hesitant to embrace the commitments that define adulthood. We see this archetype vividly portrayed in literature and popular culture. Think of Peter Pan, the quintessential eternal boy, forever fleeing into the whimsical world of Neverland, where the burdens of adulthood cannot follow. This desire to escape reality, much like Peter Pan, is a psychological phenomenon recognized by Carl Jung as the Puer Aeternus, an archetype that embodies the tension between the longing for the innocence of youth and the inevitable pull of adult responsibilities. As we delve deeper, we will explore how the Puer Aeternus not only influences individuals, but also shapes cultural narratives and even the way we approach the fundamental challenges of life.
In early childhood, a character is already there. You see, the child is not born tabula rasa, as one assumes. The child is born as a high complexity, with existing determinants that never waver through the whole life, and that give the child his character already in the earliest childhood. A mother recognizes an individuality of her child. And so if you observe carefully, you see the tremendous difference, even in very small children. And these peculiarities express themselves in every way. So first, the peculiarities express themselves in all childish activities, in the way how it plays, in the things it is interested in. There are children who are tremendously interested in all moving things, and in movement chiefly. All the things, you see, that affect the body. And so they are interested in what the eyes do, what the ears do, how far you can bore into the nose with your finger, you know. Now, you see, these things, these interests express themselves in a typically childish way in children, and later on they express themselves in other peculiarities. which are still the same, but it doesn't come from the fact that they once have done such and such a thing in childhood. It is the character that is doing it. There is a definite inherited complexity.
Jung is challenging the idea that we start life as blank slates. Instead, he suggests that we are born with inherent traits and complexities that shape who we are from the very beginning.
You know, the psyche has two conditions, two important conditions. The one is the environmental influence,
Yes.
and the other is the given fact of the psyche as it is born. The psyche is by no means tabula rasa. We are a definite mixture and combination of genes, and they are there from the very first moment of our life, and they give a definite character, even to the little child. We are born into a pattern. We are a pattern. We are a structure that is pre-established through the genes. It is a biological order of our mental functioning, as for instance our biological or physiological function follows a pattern.
The explanation given here by Jung is that we are born with a pre-existing structure within us, determined by our genes, which influences how we think and behave. Understanding the dual nature of the Puer Aeternus archetype reveals both its potential benefits and challenges. This archetype, a primordial element of the psyche, carries within it both light and shadow. Like all archetypes, it is a universal pattern that appears across cultures and time, representing core human experiences. The Puer Aeternus can infuse adult life with the energy, beauty, and creativity of childhood, yet it can also hinder self-realization, trapping one in unrealistic adolescent fantasies and a life that feels like a prison. As the first archetype we encounter in life, the Puer Aeternus remains a vital force throughout our entire existence, closely linked to the mother archetype. However, a Puer or Puella often resists individuation, the process of becoming one's true self, by integrating all aspects of the personality. This resistance stunts growth, leaving their great imagination and rich inner life buried in the unconscious, untouched by conscious awareness, and preventing them from progressing in life. Archetypes, such as the hero, the mother, or the wise old man, are like roles in a play, universal characters that show up in stories, myths, and even in our own lives. At different stages of our lives, these roles take center stage, influencing our behaviors and experiences. Popular media, like the 1999 movie The Matrix, vividly explores the tension between confronting reality and escaping into fantasy, echoing the internal struggle of the Puer Aeternus. In The Matrix, the main character Neo is offered the choice between a red pill and a blue pill. The blue pill allows him to remain content and comfortable in a simulated reality. It is the idea that ignorance is bliss. The red pill, on the other hand, allows him to confront the harsh truth of reality and to embark on the quest of self-realization. The pure will often choose the blue pill. A hallmark of the Puer Aeternus is the reluctance to embrace reality. This archetype is often seen in individuals who struggle to commit to work, form meaningful relationships, or take on the responsibilities that come with maturity. In her book Puer Aeternus, a psychological study of the adult struggle with the paradise of childhood, Jungian analyst Marie-Louise von Franz gives us an in-depth exploration of the Puer Aeternus.
When a man has a mother complex, he's generally a split anima. Namely, on one side, his feminine side is, he worships the feminine image too much. It's a kind of Virgin Mary or feminine Holy Ghost figure, the pure, wonderful woman, so to speak. And the other is the prostitute, with whom he has sex, but whom he thoroughly despises. This kind of split in the anima between the Virgin Mary and the prostitute is typical for the mother complex.
Von Franz describes a common psychological issue where a man sees women as either pure and untouchable or as objects of desire, often rooted in his relationship with his mother. The influence of the mother complex often exacerbates the challenges faced by the Puer Aeternus in transitioning to adulthood. A mother complex happens when someone is overly dependent on their mother or the idea of a mother. This can make it hard for them to grow up and become independent. For men, this might also lead to seeing women in an unrealistic way, either as perfect or as something to be used. This unhealthy dependency can prevent personal growth and lead to a life of unfulfilled potential. It's like being stuck in a cozy nest that feels safe, but if you stay there too long, you will never learn to fly on your own.
Man has a certain pattern that makes him specifically human, and no man is born without it. We are only deeply unconscious of these facts because we live all by our senses and outside of ourselves. If a man could look into himself, he would discover it. And when a man discovers it, in our days, he thinks he's crazy. And he may be crazy.
Jung is pointing out that people are often unaware of their inner world because they focus too much on external experiences. If they were to explore their inner selves, they might feel disoriented or think they are losing touch with reality. This results in a mother complex. The Puer or Puella depends on others, typically parents, to solve their problems. His or her lack of interest in learning prevents them from developing a proper understanding of anything. The female counterpart to the Puer Aeternus is the Puella Eterna. Like the Puer, the Puella is often trapped in a cycle of dependency and idealization, which can lead to destructive relationships. Marie-Louise von Franz highlights the danger when women over-identify with the anima projection.
She did not live her own life. She acted all the time the anima of men. Generally, there are women, and that is ultimately due to the power drive. When women discover that if they are beautiful, they can exert a magic power over men, then they take to acting all the time the anima. We are even in our jargon sometimes talking about anima women. Those are women who find out how to act the anima to men. And because this is not love but pure power drive, it is destructive to the men and to themselves. Because it's using the guise of love for worldly power.
This dynamic can trap both the woman and the man in roles that are damaging. When a woman embraces this projected role, she may gain power, but it is ultimately unfulfilling and isolating, as it distances her from her true self and genuine human connections. Marie-Louise von Franz, in Puer Aeternus. Such people usually have great difficulty in finding a job, for whatever they find is never quite right or quite what they wanted. There is always a hair in the soup. The woman is never quite the right woman. She is nice as a girlfriend, but there is always a but which prevents marriage or any kind of commitment. The Puer is aware of the transitoriness of life, so he does not give himself wholeheartedly to any experience. The Puella, similarly, knows that the end will be a disappointment and a parting. The Puer or Puella are always getting ready to say goodbye, which makes it more likely for the experience to end, thus erroneously reinforcing his or her beliefs even more.
The way in which a man should behave is given by an archetype. And therefore, you see, the primitives tell such stories. A great deal of education goes through storytelling. You see, if you are unconscious about certain things that ought to be conscious, then you are dissociated. And then you are a man whose left hand never knows what the right is doing and counteracts or interferes with the right hand. Now, such a man is hampered all over the place.
Jung is saying that we are born with certain patterns of behavior, which are expressed as archetypes, universal symbols or models of experience that influence our behavior and thoughts. The Puer and Senex archetypes symbolize the balance between youthful energy and mature wisdom, both essential for a fulfilled life. The Senex represents the old man archetype, wise, disciplined, and responsible, while the Puer embodies the vitality of eternal youth. Both are crucial, but an imbalance can lead to problems. Striking the right balance between these opposing forces is vital for psychological health. Imagine a seesaw. On one side sits the serious, responsible Senex, on the other, the fun, carefree Puer. A healthy life depends on balancing both. A common issue for the Puer or Puella is trying to avoid suffering by anticipating disappointment, which leads to a refusal to truly live. This overthinking becomes a disease, trapping him or her in a bubble of reflective hyperconsciousness that isolates them from life.
This depends upon the fact that the child is not born tabula rasa, but it is a definite mixture of or combination of genes. And the gene, although the genes seem to contain chiefly dynamic factors, arrangeurs of a certain behavior, they have a tremendous importance also for the arrangement of the psyche. The psyche too, inasmuch as it appears naturally. Before it appears, you cannot study it, but inasmuch as it appears, it has certain qualities, it has a certain character, and that needs must depend upon the elements born in the child. So, factors determining human behavior are born with the child and determine its further development. Now that is one side of the picture. The other side of the picture is the individual lives in connection with others in certain definite surroundings that will influence the given combination of qualities. And that is now also a very complicated factor, because the environmental influences are not merely personal. There are any amount of objective factors, the general social conditions, laws, convictions, ways of looking at things, of dealing with things. Now, these things are not of an arbitrary character. They are historical. There are historical reasons why things are as they are. And as there are historical reasons for the qualities of the psyche that is born.
Jung is discussing how a child's traits are shaped not only by their inherent nature, but also by environmental influences and social conditions. The person living provisionally is alienated from their own reality, spending time ruminating on fantasies that go nowhere and achieve nothing. While the Puer or Puella have vivid imaginations, they are not capable of transforming these insights into action because they live in an ethereal realm, missing the blood and guts of life on earth. As a result, the Puer and Puella are not very successful in life. This lack of grounding in reality can result in a life of unfulfilled potential, as demonstrated by the example of a 30-year-old man named John, who lives with his parents, spending his time playing video games and fantasizing about starting his own business. Despite his talents, he avoids taking concrete steps towards his goals, fearing failure and the loss of his carefree lifestyle. Therapy helps John realize that his fear of growing up is rooted in his pure Aeternus complex, and he begins to take small, consistent steps towards independence. In her book, Puer Aeternus, Marie-Louise von Franz writes, "In actuality, for instance, he gets up at 10:30 a.m., hangs around till lunchtime with a cigarette in his mouth, giving way to his emotions and fantasies. In the afternoon he means to do some work, but first he goes out with friends, and then with a girl, and the evening is spent in long discussion about the meaning of life. He then goes to bed at 1, and the next day is a repetition of the one before. In that way, the capacity for life and the inner riches are wasted, for they cannot get into something meaningful but slowly overgrow the real personality. the individual walks about in a cloud of fantasies. Fantasies which in themselves are interesting and full of rich possibilities, full of unlived life. You feel that such a person has a tremendous wealth and capacity, but there is no possibility of finding a means of realization.
Now, if you look at it from the inside,
Yes.
then it is just so as if you would observe the world. When you observe the world, you see people, you see houses, you see the sky, you see tangible objects. But when you observe yourself within, you see moving images, a world of images, generally known as fantasies. Yet these fantasies are facts. It is a fact that a man has such and such a fantasy. And it is such a tangible fact, for instance, that when a man has a certain fantasy, another man may lose his life. Or a bridge is built.
Yes.
These houses were all fantasies.
Yes.
Everything you do here, all of the houses, everything was fantasy to begin with. And fantasy has a proper reality. That is not to be forgotten. Fantasy is not nothing. It is, of course, not a tangible object, but it is a fact, nevertheless. It is, say, a form of energy, despite the fact we can't measure it. It is a manifestation of something.
As Jung insightfully observes, these inner fantasies are not just idle imaginings, but potent energies that can carve out the very contours of our reality. Yet when we allow these fantasies to take the reins, they can construct a false persona, a mask that separates us from the authenticity of our true self and the grounded experiences essential for meaningful growth. Though the Puer and Puella often have a great capacity to assimilate ideas and seem eager to implement them, the actual follow-through rarely occurs. This is because the Puer and Puella are not fully grounded in reality, preferring to live in the safety of fantasy, where ideas remain unchallenged by real-world demands. Despite having the potential for growth, both the Puer and Puella often find it difficult to transition from fantasy to reality. What may seem like a simple step, turning dreams into action, becomes an insurmountable challenge. The word human originates from the Latin humus, meaning earth, reminding us that to be truly human is to be grounded in the realities of life. Embracing this groundedness nourishes us and fosters real growth, something the Puer and Puella often struggle to achieve.
Now, Freud doesn't exactly call it project, he calls it transference. That is an allusion to the old and superstitious idea of handing over a disease, transferring a disease upon an animal, or handing over the sin upon a scapegoat, and the scapegoat takes it out into the desert and makes it disappear. So they hand over themselves in the hope that I can swallow that stuff and digest it for them. And so I'm in loco parentis and have a high authority. Naturally, I'm also persecuted by the corresponding resistances, by all the manifold emotional reactions they have had against their parents. Now, that is the stuff you have to work through first in analyzing the situation, because a patient in such a position is not free, he's a slave, he's utterly dependent upon the doctor, like a patient with an open abdomen on the operation table.
As Jung thoughtfully expressed, this struggle, often seen in the Puer Aeternus and Puella Aeterna, emerges in therapy and other relationships, where unresolved childhood emotions are transferred onto significant figures. This struggle to fully engage with life, which often stems from unresolved childhood influences, can lead to serious consequences, as Jung illustrates with a tragic case. Jung recounts the harrowing tale of a 25-year-old woman trapped in a profound detachment from life, so lost within herself that the world around her became a mere shadow. She drifted through her days as if behind a veil, unable to grasp the essence of her experiences or connect with those around her. Despite Jung's tireless efforts to reach through her isolation, she remained imprisoned in her inner darkness. In the end, This unbearable disconnection drove her to a final, tragic act, ending her life just months later. Visions notes of the seminar given in 1930 through 1934 by Carl Gustav Jung. I saw the corpse. She had shot herself through the heart in the street and had not lost consciousness for a minute or two. The expression on her face was completely altered. For a long time I stood watching her face and asking myself, what kind of expression is that? It was most extraordinary, the expression of someone who was convinced, say, that a thing was black and to whom it was very important that it was black, but to whom one had finally proved that it was red, and now it was as if she suddenly realized it was red. It was a look full of bewilderment and a sort of pleasant surprise. I saw what had happened. At the moment when she shot herself, while she was still alive, yet felt it was done and irrevocable, she understood what life was for the first time.
You have a hunch, something is going wrong, particularly when you are driving an automobile. For instance, it is a day where nurses appear in the street, and they always try to get something interesting like a suicide, to be run over. That's what marvelous, apparently. And then, you get a peculiar feeling. And really, at the next corner already is a second nurse that runs in front of the automobile.
These uncanny patterns, where seemingly random events cluster together, mirror the unresolved psychological struggles of the Puer Aeternus and Puella Eterna. Just as these chance events suggest an unseen connection, the inner turmoil and unaddressed conflicts within a person can manifest in dramatic and unforeseen ways, leading to serious consequences, as tragically illustrated in the case of the 25-year-old woman. Sometimes people must experience severe self-inflicted harm before they can truly awaken to the reality of life. This highlights how deeply unconscious many individuals are. The inner and outer worlds must balance each other, as one cannot thrive without the other. When there's an over-reliance on the inner world, where the ego remains trapped in a metaphorical neverland, it becomes impossible to transition into adulthood. As this imbalance intensifies, the unconscious begins to encroach, threatening to overwhelm and submerge the ego entirely. Von Franz writes in Puer Aeternus, "Whatever one has within oneself, but does not live, grows against one." The opposite of the Puer Aeternus archetype is found in those who are forced to mature too quickly due to harsh life circumstances. Some children grow up far too early, shaped by neglect, becoming the stark contrast to the Puer Aeternus. Life's hardships push them to become overly realistic, independent, and disillusioned. Their prematurely mature expressions often reveal that something went awry, as they've lost the magical essence of eternal youth. Stripped of childhood too soon, they struggle to love or trust, and life loses meaning. They live only half a life. The challenge is to reconnect them with their lost childhood fantasies and integrate them healthily. Despite its challenges, the eternal child embodies positive traits, deep spirituality, charm, youthful vigor, and the ability to spark profound conversations. The Puer represents the divine child, symbolizing new beginnings, growth, and hope for the future. This concept resonates with Nietzsche's belief in the child archetype as a symbol of new beginnings. Nietzsche saw the child as the final stage of becoming one's true self. Often, we conform and lose touch with who we really are. This passage is part of Nietzsche's description of the three metamorphoses of the spirit in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Innocence is the child, and forgetfulness, a new beginning, a game, a self-rolling wheel, a first movement, a holy yea.
So the persona is a certain complicated system of behavior, which is partially dictated by society and partially dictated by the expectations or the wishes one nurses oneself. Now, this is not the real personality, in spite of the fact that people will assure you that that is all quite real and quite honest. Yet it is not. These contents are associated with all the important persons in the life of a patient. Now, the most important persons are usually father and mother. that comes up from childhood. So, in handing over your infantile memories about the father or about the mother, you hand over also the image of father and mother. Then it is just as if the doctor had taken the place of the father, even of the mother.
As Jung emphasizes, true maturity lies not in abandoning the inner child, but in integrating its wonder and creativity into adulthood. By balancing these youthful qualities with life's realities, we enrich our journey and prevent the inner child from becoming a source of suffering. Embracing the inner child is not about regressing, but about integrating its qualities into mature adulthood. The inner child symbolizes the essence of maturity, not a return to infancy, but a journey toward wholeness. This child resides within us all, even in old age, sometimes reappearing as childlike innocence. The eternal youth embodies presence, wonder, and playfulness, serving as a source of pure creativity. He is a yes-sayer, affirming life and bringing the divine into earthly existence. This concept aligns with the Kybalian's teaching in Hermetic philosophy. The lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of understanding, indicating that true understanding, like the inner child, requires a return to openness and innocence. Growth and fulfillment come from embracing responsibility and engaging with the real world. Jung emphasizes that avoiding this work may seem easier, but it leads to frustration and unfulfilled potential. The balance between the Puer and Senex archetypes is crucial for a well-rounded life. Like tending a garden, you might desire the flowers and fruits, but without the hard work of planting and nurturing, nothing grows. As we age, the Senex archetype becomes more dominant, but the Puer must still be honored. The Senex represents wisdom, patience, and control, but can also become cynical and rigid. The Puer represents youth and creativity, but these archetypes are two sides of the same coin. We understand youth by knowing age. We recognize aging by remembering our youth. Jung offers insights into how these archetypes interact within us, emphasizing the importance of balance. Within Carl Jung's work, Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, they are genuine symbols precisely because they are ambiguous, full of half-glimpsed meanings, and in the last resort, inexhaustible. The ground principles, the psyche of the unconscious, are indescribable because of their wealth of reference, although in themselves recognizable. The discriminating intellect naturally keeps on trying to establish their singleness of meaning, and thus misses the essential point. For what we can above all establish as the one thing consistent with their nature is their manifold meaning, their almost limitless wealth of reference, which makes any unilateral formulation impossible. Besides this, they are in principle paradoxical. Just as for the alchemists, the spirit was conceived as senex et juveni simul, an old man and a youth at once. The Puer dreams big, the senex works hard. Both archetypes live within us and are necessary for psychological health. A one-sided imbalance in either direction is not advisable. The Puer or Puella are drawn to imaginative and spontaneous activities that allow for freedom and avoid commitment, while the senex finds play in productive activities like painting or building. This balance is evident in Jung's life, where he skillfully navigated between these forces, especially during his most challenging periods. In his most difficult times, Jung, primarily a senex, created sculptures, carved inscriptions, drew mandalas, and crafted the Red Book, filled with images from the unconscious. His retrospection through childhood memories led him not to answers, but to a deeper acknowledgement of his own ignorance. Carl Jung said to himself in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, "Since I know nothing at all, I shall simply do whatever occurs to me." The first thing that came to the surface was a childhood memory from perhaps my 10th or 11th year. At that time I had a spell of playing passionately with building blocks. I distinctly recalled how I had built little houses and castles, using bottles to form the sides of gates and vaults. Somewhat later, I had used ordinary stones, with mud for mortar. These structures had fascinated me for a long time. To my astonishment, this memory was accompanied by a good deal of emotion. "Aha!" I said to myself. "There is still life in these things. The small boy is still around, and possesses a creative life which I lack. But how can I make my way to it?" Jung realized that he had been neglecting his inner child. He felt humiliated to realize that he had to play childish games in his old age. Nevertheless, he started gathering stones and slowly built a miniature village.
You see, the type is nothing static. It changes in the course of life. But I most certainly was characterized by thinking. I always thought, from early childhood on. And I had a great deal of intuition too. And I had a definite difficulty with feeling. And my relation to reality was not particularly brilliant. I was often at variance with the reality of things.
Reflecting on his early life, Jung recognized how his Puer, driven by intuition and creativity, interacted with his Senex, rooted in disciplined thought and caution, shaping his psychological growth. This led him to embrace creative play, like building, to balance these forces and find clarity. He went to his building game after the noon meal every day until his patients arrived, and if he finished with his work early enough in the evening, he went back to building. In the course of this activity, his thoughts clarified, and he felt a source of creativity, enthusiasm, and a sense of renewal. Jung reflects in Memories, Dreams, Reflections. Naturally, I thought about the significance of what I was doing, and asked myself, now really, what are you about? You are building a small town, and doing it as if it were a right. I had no answer to my question, only the inner certainty that I was on the way to discovering my own myth. For the building game was only a beginning. It released a stream of fantasies, which I later carefully wrote down. Jung's most ambitious project of Senex play was building the tower, situated at Bollingen, a product of 12 years of work. It is a solitary place, surrounded by nature near Lake Zurich. He would spend several months there each year and nourish his soul. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections. At Bollingen, I am in the midst of my true life. I am most deeply myself. The hero's journey, a common pattern in myths and movies, involves leaving normal life, facing challenges, learning important lessons, and returning stronger and wiser. Avoiding this journey leaves one stuck, afraid to grow and change. This journey is crucial for overcoming the Puer Aeternus limitations. It's like a video game where progress requires facing challenges. Without them, you remain stuck. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's The Little Prince explores the Puer Aeternus, the eternal child struggling to reconcile imagination with adulthood. Saint-Exupéry, a successful writer and aviator, embodied this archetype but faced deep depression and restlessness, especially when grounded. His tragic death in a World War II plane crash reflects his lifelong tension between inner dreams and harsh reality. Saint-Exupéry's life highlights the struggle between imagination and reality, central to the Puer Aeternus. In The Little Prince, a childhood memory of his misunderstood drawing, seen as a hat instead of a boa constrictor digesting an elephant, symbolizes his lifelong conflict between creativity and adult expectations. Discouraged from art, he chose aviation, but continued seeking understanding, only to meet superficial responses. This theme peaks when he crashes in the desert, echoing his real-life near-death experience. There he meets the little prince, who instead of the complex boa constrictor asks for a simple sheep, symbolizing the conflict between his creative inner life and the demands of adulthood. Ultimately, Saint-Exupéry's work asks, how can one grow up without losing the creativity, magic, and vitality of youth? His story highlights the challenge of bridging the gap between the vibrant inner life of the child and the often barren reality of adulthood, a challenge central to the Puer Aeternus.
When the psyche is not under that obligation to live in time and space alone, and obviously it doesn't, then to that extent the psyche is not submitted to those laws. And that means a practical continuation of life, of a sort of psychical existence beyond time and space.
This concept of a psychical existence beyond time and space parallels the ongoing tension within the Puer Aeternus and Puella Eterna, where the inner child resists the confines of adult life, yearning for a reality unbound by temporal and spatial limitations. Yet this resistance, if left unchecked, can prevent the maturation needed to fully engage with the external world, as seen in the life of Saint-Exupéry. The challenge lies not in knowing what to do, but in the discomfort of holding oneself accountable to those standards. The struggle between the inner child and the realities of adulthood is a universal challenge, evident in Saint-Exupéry's life and work. His greater personality was consumed by the archetype of the devouring mother, stifling his development and preventing him from fully maturing. Trapped in a protective, womb-like state, he never ventured fully into adulthood. This great mother devours rather than nurtures his potential. Integrating the Puer Aeternus requires grounding oneself in reality while retaining the archetype's positive qualities. In Jung's analysis of the archetypes and the collective unconscious, this type often develops in reaction to a mother who is wholly a thrall of nature, purely instinctive and therefore all-devouring. Such a mother is an anachronism, a throwback to a primitive state of matriarchy. Saint-Exupéry never undertakes the hero's journey, symbolized by the elephant in his drawing, a hero who remains trapped rather than escaping. The elephant, embodying generosity, intelligence, and strength, mirrors Saint-Exupéry's own qualities, yet it is swallowed by the devouring mother, the regressive pull of the unconscious, and ultimately, death. Though Saint-Exupéry was unaware of this dynamic, von Franz suggests he nearly understood it. The path to maturity involves embracing daily life, work, and social engagement. To integrate the Puer Aeternus and Puella Aeterna, one must ground oneself in reality through daily chores, work, and merging with society, much like accepting the simple sheep requested by the little prince, symbolizing the reconciliation between creativity and the responsibilities of adulthood. This process, though challenging, is the antidote for a mother complex. Few young men pull away from the mother on their own. Most do it through collectivity. Social engagement is key to overcoming the mother complex and moving toward individuation. Immersing oneself in society is the first step, allowing for warmth, relatedness, and a sense of belonging. The Puer and Puella must balance this by not losing their individuality within the crowd. They must sacrifice their inflated sense of specialness while preserving their true selves, finding a balance between social life and spiritual life. Without time alone, they may never build the indestructible foundation crucial for self-realization.
So, you see, the man who is going by the external world, by the influences of the external world, say society or perceptions, sense perceptions, thinks that he is more valid, you know, because this is valid, this is real. And the man who goes by the subjective factor is not valid because subjective factor is nothing. Yeah. No, that man is just as well based because he is bases himself upon the world from within. And so he is quite right, even if he says, oh, there's nothing but my fantasy, you know. And of course that is the introvert. And as the introvert is always afraid of the external world, he will tell you, when you ask him, he will be apologetic about it. He will say, of course, yes, I know, only my fantasies. And he has always a resentment. And as the world in general, particularly America, is extroverted like hell, the introvert has no place. Because he doesn't know that he beholds the world from within. And that gives him dignity, and that gives him certainty, because it is, nowadays particularly.
The tension between the inner world and external reality is a core challenge in navigating life's journey, as Jung emphasizes the importance of maintaining one's internal perspective, even in a society that prioritizes external validation. This internal-external conflict resonates deeply with Nietzsche's reflections on the need for solitude to reconnect with one's true self, highlighting the struggle to maintain individuality within the pressures of the collective. Friedrich Nietzsche writes in Daybreak, "When I am among the many, I live as the many do, and I do not think as I really think. After a time, it always seems as though they want to banish me from myself and rob me of my soul, and I grow angry with everybody and fear everybody. I then require the desert so as to grow good again." Nietzsche expresses the idea that being in a crowd pressures him to conform, causing him to lose his true self, and only solitude can restore his sense of authenticity and peace. life's journey involves navigating between the demands of the external world and the insights of the inner world. Jung likened the human lifespan to the passage of the sun over 12 hours. The sun rises at birth, climbs as we grow from youth to adulthood, reaches its zenith at midlife where our abilities peak, then begins its descent as we age until it sets at death. Each life phase has its own priorities and psychological focus. For Jung, the first half of life is about strengthening the ego through work, education, and relationships. In the second half, we become anchored in reality and shift our focus inward, seeking individuation. This shift from external achievement to inner growth is often marked by a midlife crisis, a call from the soul for deeper meaning. Carl Jung in Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche. The significance of the morning of life undoubtedly lies in the development of the individual, our entrenchment in the outer world, the propagation of our kind, and the care of our children. This is the obvious purpose of nature. Whoever carries over into the afternoon of life the law of the morning or the natural aim must pay for it with damage to his soul, just as surely as a growing youth who tries to carry over his childish egoism into adult life must pay for this mistake with social failure. Jung emphasized that the tasks and goals of early life, focused on external achievements, must give way to inner growth in later life, or else the soul will suffer.
The way you are creates certain situations with people in your relations, and these two situations don't chime in. They are just dissonances. It may be, that what the unconscious has to say is so disagreeable that one prefers not to listen. And in most cases, people would be probably less neurotic if they could admit the things. These things are always a bit difficult or disagreeable or inconvenient or something of the sort. So there is always a certain amount of repression. When in treatment, for instance, in the treatment of neurosis, you have to do with that personal unconscious for quite a while. And then only dreams come that show that the collective unconscious is touched upon. Yes. Now, as long as there is material for personal nature, you have to deal with the personal unconscious. But when you get to, say, to a question, to a problem, which is no more merely personal, but also collective, you get collective dreams.
This tension between the inner world and external reality, as Jung describes, often leads to dissonances within the psyche. When the unconscious brings forth material that is too challenging to confront, repression sets in, giving rise to neurosis. For the Puer and Puella, this inner conflict manifests as a struggle between the desire to remain in the fantasy world of eternal youth and the need to engage with the realities of adulthood. Yet, it is through confronting these uncomfortable truths, such as the shadow and the anima or animus, that the Puer and Puella can begin to reconcile these dissonances and move toward true individuation. Engaging with the shadow and staying connected to the anima or animus are crucial in the individuation process. The essential step for the Puer is to confront his shadow while ensuring he doesn't lose touch with his anima, just as the Puella must face her shadow without losing connection to her animus. Balancing the inner and outer worlds is key to individuation. By committing to work, the Puer and Puella can become truly exceptional in reality, not just in fantasy. The specific job or true calling is less important than the commitment to any job and fully engaging with the outer world. In 1844, Søren Kierkegaard wrote of as being the dizziness of freedom, the dizzying effect of looking into the boundlessness of one's own possibilities. This can lead to either losing oneself in the finite, merely imitating others, or becoming paralyzed by endless options, never taking action. As the Puer and Puella wrestle with this overwhelming freedom, they often succumb to laziness, retreating into depression to cope with the burden of choice. They know their failures stem from laziness, yet they cannot will themselves out of it, and thus remain in depression. We all have a reservoir of enthusiasm hidden until we integrate the eternal youth archetype. The unconscious guides us toward where energy flows naturally, making it easier to work in alignment with our instincts. When asked how one should live, Jung wrote in his letter to Frau, "You want to go your individual way. It is the way you make for yourself, which is never prescribed, which you do not know in advance, and which simply comes into being of itself when you put one foot in front of the other. If you always do the next thing that needs to be done, you will go most safely and sure-footedly along the path prescribed by your unconscious. Then it is naturally no help at all to speculate about how you ought to live. Given the complexities of living a meaningful life, Jung advises focusing on the immediate tasks before us, as overthinking leads to confusion and inaction. Instead of wasting time on speculation, he urges us to toil the soil directly in front of us, ensuring we are always engaged in something meaningful and aligned with our fate. By avoiding the call to adventure, the Puer remains trapped in stagnation, unable to access the transformative power beyond his fears. In the hero's journey, the Puer and Puella deny this call, leading to anxiety and a refusal to leave the ordinary world. She avoids confronting their dragon, their deepest fears or long-avoided memories, and thus misses the reward, the inner gold that comes from psychological death and rebirth. Without this transformation, individuation cannot occur. In contrast, traditional rites of passage across cultures compel individuals to face their fears, marking the transition from childhood to adulthood.
All the big transitions in life are in all societies have been accompanied by so-called what Genep calls rite de passage, rites of transition, to make a ritual to help people to make the step over the threshold. Now, the most famous one, which has been studied mostly by ethnologists, is the ritual of initiation, where the young men are initiated into the secrets of the tribal law and into the secrets of sexuality. And they have to leave mother and their home. They are secluded in the bush. They are symbolically devoured by a maternal monster. They are reborn. They have to generally stand a lot of tortures. They are sometimes also homosexually assaulted by the older men with the idea of injecting them masculinity. And then they are generally at the same time instructed with the secret law of the tribe and the religious traditions. And if somebody, and a young man has undergone all this ritual of transition, then he is afterwards a full member of the tribe, he's a man. And many tribes call the ones who are afraid, who are for some other reason not initiated, they say, he's not initiated, he's an animal. Meaning he has remained completely unconscious, he has remained in an unconscious animal conditions. He has not really made the step to being human.
These ancient rites of initiation were essential in breaking the dependency on the symbolic mother, addressing the same inner struggles that Marie-Louise von Franz describes in The Mother Complex and the Puer Aeternus. Just as these rituals guided young men into adulthood, von Franz suggests that individuals today must confront their inner dependencies to achieve true maturity. In today's world, where such rites are rare, the role of the father, or a father figure, becomes even more crucial in guiding the Puer and Puella toward adulthood. In Symbols of Transformation, Jung writes, "For the hero, fear is a challenge and a task, because only boldness can deliver from fear. And if the risk is not taken, the meaning of life is somehow violated, and the whole future is condemned to hopeless staleness, to a drab grey lit only by will-o'-the-wisps." Fathers traditionally do not create the same bond of dependency with the child as mothers do. Instead, their role has often been to provide resources, protection, and, most importantly, guidance. A father's role is to help the child break free from dependency on the mother, guiding them toward becoming an independent and functional adult. For women, this transition often involves embracing the responsibilities of motherhood, which requires a profound inner transformation. To embody the archetype of the mother, a woman must sacrifice the archetype of Aphrodite, accepting the physical and emotional changes that come with motherhood. This responsibility often leads to the death of the Puella within her. This doesn't mean that every woman without children is a Puella, nor that every mother is free from the Puella archetype, but rather that the transition into adulthood requires significant inner work and sacrifice. In today's society, where cultural fathers and rites of initiation are lacking, young people often rely on their personal fathers for guidance into adulthood. However, not all fathers are equipped to provide this, as it demands strength, independence, and emotional presence. Initiation is about throwing oneself into the fire of life. Unlike our ancestors, who had tribal initiations, modern men often seek alternatives like military service or adopt a gym bro mentality. Some young men fantasize about survival situations, like being stranded on an island where they must rely on their wits to build a fire, find shelter, and hunt for food. This idea is both terrifying and thrilling, representing a deep psychological desire for an archetype to activate within them, guiding them through life. If a child enters adulthood with a strong mother complex, they may avoid developing independence or consciousness, instead becoming gripped by what Jung called the spirit of regression. This spirit binds them to the mother, threatening them with dissolution and extinction in the unconscious. In the context of Jungian psychology, dreams are not just a gateway to the unconscious, they are a crucial path to reclaiming the lost parts of the self. They play a pivotal role in the integration of the Puer and Puella. When the inner child appears in dreams, it holds a dual significance. It is both behind us and ahead of us. Behind us, the infantile shadow tugs at us, urging us toward dependency, laziness, and the escape from life's responsibilities. To truly step into the role of the hero, this shadow must be sacrificed. Ahead of us, the child God stands as a beacon of renewal, symbolizing the limitless potential for growth and the ever-expanding journey of life. Jung believed that engaging with our dreams unlocks the hidden energies of the psyche, catalyzing profound personal growth and transformation. As our ego attitude shifts, so too do our dreams, reflecting this inner change. By recording our dreams, imbuing them with meaning, and expressing them through drawing and coloring, we amplify their contents, bringing imaginary figures into tangible reality. This intentional effort signals to the unconscious, which responds in kind. Through the practice of active imagination, these dream images are not only brought into consciousness, but are also transformed and integrated into our daily lives, enriching our journey toward wholeness.
Now we must see what you dream, because the dream is a manifestation of the unconscious side. Now he never had heard of the unconscious side. So I must explain to him that he has an unconscious, and that the dream is a manifestation of it, and if we succeed in analyzing the dream, we might get an idea about that power that makes him think like that. You see? In such a case, one can begin right away with the analysis of dreams. And in all cases that are a bit serious, mind you, this is not a simple case, this is a very serious and difficult case, in spite of the simplicity of the phenomenology, of the symptomatology. In all cases, after the preliminaries, as it were, history of the family, the whole medical anamnesis, etc., we come to that question. What is it in your unconscious that makes you wrong, that hinders you to think normally? And then we are there where we can begin with the observation of the unconscious. And then, day by day, one goes on by the data the unconscious produces. You see, we discuss the dream, and that gives a new surface to the whole problem. And he will have another dream, and the next dream gives again an answer, because the unconscious is in a compensatory relation to consciousness. And after a while, we get the full picture. And if he has the full picture and has the necessary moral stamina, well, then he can be cured. But in the end, it is a moral question whether a man applies what he had learned or not.
Dreams reveal the path we should take in life, and even when we don't fully grasp their meaning, the dream itself understands us. Swiss artist Peter Berghäuser captured this profound truth in a dream of the Puer Aeternus, which he then transformed into a painting. In the dream, a divine boy rides an immensely powerful wild horse, emerging from the vast reaches of the cosmos, from the boundless universe, the collective unconscious. He rides through the psyche like a new star blazing in the heavens, embodying an encounter with the archetype of the self. This boy, with his 4 arms, holds or is connected to a magical 8-pointed flower, a symbol of quaternity, representing the universal expression of spiritual totality. This divine image is a reflection of the wholeness that lies at the core of our being, characteristic of the divine in its most complete form. James Hollis, in his book titled Under Saturn's Shadow. To use a modem metaphor, the child's psyche is a set of potentialities, a database to be shaped by the affirmation and modeling of the parents. Through his mother, he may experience the world as a nurturing and protective environment. From father, he may receive the empowerment to enter the world and to fight for his life.
And so the human shadow represents our greatest moral task. And that task begins at home. It begins through our own acknowledgement of the fact that I carry within me all that I wish to repudiate in humankind. And I need to be conscious around that, because where I'm not conscious, it will likely show up unconsciously in my world as a result of my own behaviors or my own resistance to honest efforts.
The self is merely a term that designates the whole personality. The whole personality of man is indescribable. His consciousness can be described. His unconscious cannot be described, because the unconscious, as I must repeat myself, is always unconscious. And it is really unconscious, and really does not know it.